The night Janet Brooks became a Mafia wife, the devil of New York traced a finger along her jaw and whispered, "I'll ruin you for other men." What no one knew, least of all him, was that she was the one threat he could never control. Thank you for sticking around with me, my wonderful story family. If you're already hooked in for today's story and ready to enjoy it, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Because tomorrow, I will be giving you another story just as interesting as this one. And you don't want to miss it. New York at night had a way of pretending it was beautiful. Skyscrapers glittered like seduction wrapped in glass, and the streets pulsed with a kind of electricity that made newcomers feel hopeful, then robbed them blind the moment they blinked. Janet Brooks learned that in her first week in the city. She learned it again the night two men in pinstripe suits approached her at her father's memorial dinner and said, "Miss Brooks, Mr. Marciano sends his condolences." The words felt like a velvet noose. Her father had only been gone 4 days. She could still smell the cedar oil on his old coats and still hear her mother whispering into the phone, begging funeral directors to wait one more day for payment. She certainly wasn't expecting these men, or their envelope. "Your presence is required," one said, offering the card like a doctor handing bad news to the next of kin. Janet swallowed hard. Required by whom? He gave her the kind of look men give right before they say something that should never be said. By Vittorio Marciano. That name hit the room like a dropped gun. Her mother gasped so softly Janet almost didn't hear it. "Baby, that's not a man you keep waiting for." And so, the next morning, dressed in her best blazer, armed with lip gloss and anxiety, Janet stepped into the gold-lined elevator of Marciano Tower. It lifted her so high the city looked like a toy beneath her. When the doors opened, her pulse nearly stopped. He stood with his back to her, staring out at Manhattan as though he owned it. Vittorio Marciano, the devil of New York. A man carved from sharp lines and colder intentions. His black suit fit like sin. His jaw could cut glass. A tattoo climbed up his neck in severe, elegant lines. Something floral, something dangerous. He turned slowly, eyes locking onto hers. And for a terrifying moment, neither of them moved. "You look like your father," he said. There it was. The insult. The accusation. The warning. Janet straightened her shoulders. "I'm nothing like him." His lips curved into a smirk that was too controlled to be sincere. "We'll see." He gestured to the chair across from his desk. She sat, though every instinct told her to run, scream, fake a seizure, anything but sit quietly. He placed a folder on the table and slid it toward her. The expensive paper whispered against the polished wood, like death clearing its throat. "Your father owed me a great deal of money." She opened it, and nearly lost her ability to blink. The number inside was the kind that made people consider organ trafficking as a side hustle. This has to be a mistake," she whispered. "The Marciano syndicate doesn't make mistakes." His voice was smooth, low, and carved from ice. "But I do appreciate your optimism." "Opti." Janet snapped the folder shut and held it against her chest as though it could protect her. "I can't pay this." "No," he said, leaning back in his chair. "You can't." Her breath hitched. "Then what do you want from me?" Vito studied her, slowly, deliberately, like a man considering whether a museum piece was worth stealing or burning. Then he stood. When he spoke, his voice brushed her ear. "Marry me." She laughed. She genuinely laughed. It wasn't polite or cute. It was the laugh of a woman who had officially crossed into insanity. "You're serious?" she asked. He didn't even blink. "Very." Janet shook her head, rising from her chair. "Mr. Marciano." "Vito," he corrected calmly. "You'll need to get used to saying my name." She felt heat crawl up her neck, anger, fear, and something dangerously close to a thrill she didn't want to admit. "I'm not marrying you," she said firmly. "I don't even know you." He stepped closer, invading her space without raising a hand. "You don't need to know me. You only need to understand your position." "My position. You don't have a choice." There it was. Not a threat. Not a plea. A verdict. Janet clenched her fists. "Why me?" His eyes softened, just barely, just long enough for her to see the ghost of something broken behind them, then hardened again. "Because your father owed me," he said quietly. "And because whether you know it or not, you owe me too." She didn't understand what he meant, but the way he looked at her, the resentment, the hunger, the hate he wanted to wear like armor, told her one thing. This marriage had nothing to do with love, and everything to do with vengeance. He turned away, hands clasped behind his back. "You'll receive the paperwork in an hour. The wedding will be quick, discreet, public enough to be respected." Janet stared at him, stunned into stillness. "And if I say no?" Vito glanced over his shoulder with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Only cowards and manipulators say no to responsibility, Janet. And you don't strike me as either." He paused, then added, "But the people who don't pay their debts? They don't remain people for long." She swallowed. Hard. His smile deepened. Deadly knowing. "And if you dislike this arrangement," he murmured, "feel free to complain in the comments. Tell the world how unfair it is. Go on. I'm sure the universe will listen before I do." Janet stiffened. Because only trolls and cowards stay silent when someone tries to control them. He stepped closer, close enough for her to smell the expensive cologne and the danger beneath it. "So go ahead," he whispered. "Say something." The room held its breath with her. If you're not siding with Vito's manipulation, comment, "Everyone deserves freedom." And hit subscribe, because only cowards side with men like him. Janet had always imagined her wedding day would involve sunshine, music, and a groom who at least liked her. Instead, she found herself standing in the marble hall of City Hall's private upper chamber, an opulent room typically reserved for billionaires and presidents, while her future husband spoke quietly with three men whose suits probably cost more than her entire apartment. She should have run. She knew that. But the problem with running from men like Vito Marciano was that they didn't chase you. They simply found you. And erased you. So instead of sprinting through the nearest fire exit, Janet stood perfectly still, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles threatened to call 911 for help. The silk dress, custom-made, rushed overnight, far too stunning for the occasion, felt like someone had stitched anxiety into every seam. A man in a charcoal suit approached her. He smiled, but the smile was wrong. "Mrs. Marciano." "I'm not Mrs. Marciano yet," Janet said quickly. He chuckled. "Oh, you will be. The whole city's been waiting." "The city?" Janet echoed. "Yes. Everyone wants to see if the devil finally settles down." Her stomach dropped. She wasn't marrying a man. She was marrying a headline. Before she could respond, Vito turned, and the room's temperature shifted without the thermostat's permission. His eyes found hers, sharp and unreadable, and the men around him subtly stepped back like they weren't in the presence of a groom but a natural disaster. He approached slowly, the way a predator moves when it doesn't need to rush. When he reached her, he adjusted his cufflinks as though they were worth more than her entire financial existence, which admittedly they probably were. "You look beautiful," he said. It didn't sound like a compliment. More like an observation he was reluctantly forced to admit. Janet kept her expression even. "You look like trouble." He almost smiled. "Almost. You have no idea." The officiant cleared his throat. He was sweating through his shirt despite standing 5 feet from the coldest man in New York. "Shall we begin?" the officiant asked. "No," Janet said. The entire room froze. Vito's head turned toward her so slowly it felt like gravity itself was trying to hold him back. "No," he repeated. The officiant took a cautious step away. Janet inhaled. "If we're doing this, I need answers. I'm not marrying a stranger without understanding what I'm stepping into." A muscle in Vito's jaw twitched, an uncommon crack in his composure. "You're stepping into my protection," he said. "My world. My rules. Whether you agree to it verbally changes nothing." "That's not an answer. It's the only one I'm giving." Janet met his gaze, refusing to drop her eyes. "Then this is going to be a terrible marriage." He leaned in, lips brushing her ear in a whisper meant for her alone. "I told you the first day we met," he murmured, voice low and burning. "It's not a request." She exhaled sharply through her nose. "And I told you, I'm nothing like my father." His eyes flickered. Something raw. Something dangerous. "We'll see," he repeated softly. And then, without another word, he nodded to the officiant. The vows were quick. Cold. Clinical. Vito didn't stumble, didn't hesitate. He spoke each word like a business transaction with a pulse. Janet, however, felt her voice catch on every promise. Obey, honor, forsake all others, because they didn't feel like vows. They felt like surrender. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, Vito touched her waist lightly, guiding her close for the required kiss. His breath brushed her lips. His hand tightened at her hip. But he didn't kiss her. He paused, measured, calculated. Then he whispered against her mouth, so quietly the officiant wouldn't hear. "Remember what I said on the night we met, Janet." Her heart hammered. "I will ruin you for other men," he whispered, voice smooth as sin. "And God help you. You'll let me." Then he kissed her, slow, deliberate, claiming, not for romance but for dominance. And yet, beneath the control, beneath the anger, something flickered. Heat. Hunger. A crack in the wall he kept rebuilding every time she looked at him too long. She pulled away first, breath uneven. His gaze lingered. Too long. Too intensely. Like he hated how much he saw. The press awaited outside. Cameras, murmurs, and lights that sliced the air. When the doors opened, people surged forward, shouting questions. "Vito, is this marriage political?" "Janet, were you two dating secretly?" "Mr. Marciano, is this to mask the FBI investigation?" Vito didn't flinch. Janet wanted to vanish. He placed a hand at the small of her back, a cold, possessive gesture that made her stiffen. "My wife doesn't answer questions," he said sharply. "Not from you." Wife. The word hit her chest like an iron brand. A camera flashed in her face. Another reporter yelled something about a romantic backstory, which nearly made Janet laugh. Romantic. The devil himself probably had a better chance at finding Jesus before Vito found romance. Vito lowered his head just enough so only she could hear him. "You'll get used to this," he murmured. "I won't," she whispered back. His eyes darkened. "You will. Everyone adapts." "Not everyone," she said. He paused, then gave a small, humorless smile. "Commenters on the internet adapt quicker than you." "What does that mean?" "It means trolls settle for whatever fate gives them. If you're not a troll, you won't settle." He shot a glare at a reporter shoving too close. "If you're not siding with the media's garbage, comment, I stand with Janet." Let the cowards stay silent. He stepped forward, shielding her from the flashes. And despite everything, fear, anger, confusion, Janet felt something unexpected. Safety. The kind that terrified her more than any threat. The ride back to the penthouse was silent at first. Too silent. Vito's driver, a quiet man built like a refrigerator, kept his eyes locked forward. Janet stared out the window, watching the city blur by. "This won't work," she said finally. Vito didn't look at her. "It will. You don't even like me. I don't have to like you. Then why marry me?" He turned, eyes cutting into her like a blade. "Because justice comes in unexpected forms," he said coolly. "And sometimes the person who pays the price isn't the one who committed the crime." Her breath caught. "My father," she whispered. Vito didn't respond. He didn't have to. Because in that moment, staring into the face of the man she now legally belonged to, Janet felt a truth rise like smoke. This marriage wasn't a punishment. It was revenge. And she was the weapon. The penthouse door shut behind them with a click that sounded far too final, like a judge lowering his gavel on a verdict Janet had never agreed to. The air inside was cold, literally and metaphorically. Vito liked his homes like he liked his truths. Frozen, spotless, and hiding every trace of warmth. Janet stepped forward cautiously, taking in the space she was now expected to live in. Floor-to-ceiling windows wrapped the entire living area, letting in the Manhattan skyline like a voyeur. The furniture was sleek, dark, and ruthlessly expensive. Everything in the room seemed to whisper, "Touch me and you'll increase your debt by 40%. Behind her, Vito loosened his tie, tossing it on the counter with the kind of casual power that suggested he'd never had to worry about laundry in his life. He watched her, and the silence between them stretched thin. "You'll be staying in the guest suite until further notice," he said. "Further notice," she echoed. "That sounds ominous." "If I wanted ominous, I'd have said, 'Until I decide what to do with you.'" She turned to him sharply. "Is there actually something to decide?" He walked past her, his steps quiet but carrying the weight of someone who'd never once questioned whether he owned every room he entered. He opened the bar cabinet. "Whiskey." "Water," she said. He smirked slightly. "Whiskey would have made this easier." "For whom?" "For both of us." Janet crossed her arms. "Vito, you said this marriage is about justice." "About my father. If you expect me to live here, at least tell me what he did." He poured himself a drink. Slowly, almost theatrically. "What he did is not for tonight." "And when is it for?" "When you're ready." "And who decides that?" "I do." She exhaled, a short, frustrated breath. "Shocking." He took a sip of whiskey and looked at her over the rim of the glass. His gaze was unreadable, cold, but with something heated beneath, the way lava hides under volcanic rock. "You want directness," he said. "Fine. Your father crossed the wrong man." "Crossed you?" she asked. "Worse." His tone shut the conversation down like a slammed door. Janet swallowed hard, then turned away before she said something dangerous. The city glittered beyond the glass, mocking her with its false promise of freedom. She felt Vito approach before she heard him. His presence was a pressure, a temperature, a gravity. He stopped behind her. "You're afraid," he said quietly. "No, I'm not." "You are. You hide it well. I'll give you that." She turned. "If you're trying to intimidate me, I hate to break it to you, but I've survived worse things than a man with good bone structure and control issues." His lips twitched, almost a smile. "Is that how you see me? Is there a more accurate description?" "Many. None that contradict what I said." He stepped closer. "You don't know me." "I don't want to know you." "That," he murmured, "is a lie." Her pulse jumped. Annoyingly loud. Annoyingly obvious. He noticed. Of course he did. He leaned in slightly, lowering his voice. If I wanted to scare you, I'd succeed. But that's not what this is. Oh, then what is this? He didn't answer, but his jaw tensed, and for a flicker of a second she saw something unguarded. Pain, grief, and fury, all twisted into something sharper. Then it vanished. Your room is down the hall, he said flatly. Dinner is brought at 8. You'll eat. You'll sleep. And tomorrow we discuss expectations. You mean rules. He didn't deny it. She stepped a little closer, arms still folded. And what do you expect in return for all this? Compliance. Gratitude. Applause. His eyes lowered to her mouth, then rose slowly, deliberately. I expect you to survive. The words hit her harder than threats ever could. She frowned. Why wouldn't I? He didn't answer. And that terrified her. A sharp knock came at the door. Vito stiffened instantly, his posture changing from dangerous husband to man whose shadow could start a war. One flick of his hand told her to stay back. When he opened the door, a tall man in a dark coat stepped inside. His expression was serious, the kind of serious that comes with guns hidden in inconvenient places. Boss, the man said, nodding once. We have a problem. Vito didn't look surprised. Which kind? The FBI kind. Janet's heart climbed up into her throat and sat there with its legs dangling. Of course, Vito said calmly, setting his drink aside. They don't even give me a honeymoon. Janet blinked. We didn't exactly have a honeymoon planned. That's the joke, he said dryly. Try to keep up. The man continued. They're tightening surveillance on the Midtown docks. One of the agents asked about your marriage license. Vito's gaze sharpened. Already. They're suspicious. They were born suspicious, Vito muttered. What else? The man glanced at Janet before facing Vito again. There's also chatter about Raymond Brooks. Her father. Her stomach clenched. Vito's tone shifted. Soft. Lethal. What kind of chatter? That someone else is looking for his daughter. Janet froze. Vito didn't. He turned to her slowly, like the air itself had changed shape. Who? She whispered. The man in the coat hesitated. We don't know, but they're calling him the orphan maker. Vito's jaw locked. Hard. Janet had no idea who that was. Vito absolutely did. And whatever expression crossed his face, it wasn't fear. It was fury. He stepped toward her, every inch of him coiled, controlled, and dangerous. You stay inside this penthouse, he said, voice low enough to chill blood. You do not leave. You do not step into the hall. You don't even open the damn curtains unless I say so. Why? She demanded, pulse racing. What aren't you telling me? He stopped inches from her, eyes burning. Because the only man I ever swore to kill on sight, he said softly, is now looking for you. Her breath left her all at once. Why me? She whispered. And then came the twist she didn't see coming. Vito exhaled a shuddering breath, and for the first time, his voice cracked. Because your father, he said, was once the only friend I ever had. Janet didn't sleep that night. She lay awake in the enormous bed, large enough to fit 3 people and still have room for the Holy Ghost, staring at the faint glow of Manhattan slipping through the curtains. The city blinked back at her like an accomplice that had seen too much and was politely pretending not to judge. Across the room, Vito sat in the armchair near the window, still in his shirt and slacks, tie discarded, hair slightly undone. For once, he didn't look like the untouchable devil whispered about in alleyways and FBI briefings. He looked a human. Angry at it, but human. He hadn't said a word to her since the confrontation. just poured himself a drink, sat down, and brooded like a villain mid-origin story. Janet finally exhaled. "Are you really going to sit there all night?" He didn't look at her. "I don't trust myself to come closer." A chill skated down her spine, not from fear but from the terrible honesty in his voice. "Vito, what do you want from me?" His jaw tensed. A full 10 seconds passed before he answered. "I want you to stop making me feel things," he said quietly. "I don't have room in my world for softness." She sat up, pulling the silk sheet around her. "Then stop looking at me like you're starving." That made him turn. His eyes, dark, sharp, conflicted, locked onto hers. "You think this is hunger?" His voice was low and strained. "This is war." He stood slowly, each step toward the bed measured and cautious. Not because he feared her. Because he feared himself. He stopped at the edge of the mattress. "I don't know how to want someone without destroying them," he said. "And I refuse to watch you become another casualty." Janet swallowed. "You don't get to decide that for me." "I do," he said. "Because you're my wife. By force. By contract." "By revenge," she countered. He flinched, so slightly most wouldn't notice, but she did. And for a moment she saw him break. Not dramatically. Not loudly. But in the quiet, dangerous way a skyscraper cracks from the inside. Silent right up until the moment it collapses. "Go to sleep, Janet," he whispered. "Before I do something we'll both regret." But she didn't lie back down. She stood. And when she stepped toward him, he actually stepped back. "Why are you afraid of me?" she asked softly. "I'm not," he said, but his voice betrayed him. She touched his chest, just above the dragon's tail inked across his collarbone. His breath hitched. "Look at you," she murmured. "The devil of New York. A man everyone fears. And yet here you are. Terrified of your own wife." His hand closed around her wrist, not hard, just enough to stop her from touching him again. "Don't," he said. Not a command. A plea. "Please." Her heart stuttered. She had never heard that word from him. Not from him. And because the universe dislikes peace, the bedroom door swung open. Rico, a bodyguard who treated facial expressions as optional accessories, stood in the doorway. "Boss, we've got a situation." Vito's hand dropped from her wrist immediately. His mask snapped on like armor. "What now?" "Feds. They're downstairs." Vito muttered something sharp in Italian and grabbed his jacket. But before he followed Rico out, he looked at Janet one last time. Not with hatred. Not with desire. But with a terrible, fragile conflict that scared her more than any Mafia threat ever could. "Stay in the room," he said. "And don't open this door for anyone but me." His voice was all iron again. But his eyes weren't. He left. And when the door closed behind him, Janet fell back onto the bed, heart pounding. The FBI was here. Her husband was unraveling. And she was caught in the center like a matchstick between two lit fuses. She pressed her palms to her face. "What am I doing?" she whispered. Then, despite everything, she laughed once, short, tired, and slightly hysterical. Life really was petty. Even her marriage trauma came with jump scares. But then her expression hardened. Because Vito wasn't the only one who could play quietly and dangerously. If the FBI were here, she might finally get answers. And maybe, finally, get free. But freedom always came with a price. A heavy one. And she knew the devil would collect. If you've ever met someone like Vito, controlling, unpredictable, and hiding behind power, then you already know the danger Janet is facing. Hit subscribe if you believe no one should be owned or controlled. Only manipulators would ignore that. Janet wasn't supposed to leave the room. Which, naturally, meant she was absolutely going to leave the room. She paced for a full minute, trying to pretend she was the kind of obedient mafia wife who listened to instructions. But she'd never been that girl. Her father hadn't raised her to be soft, unwise, occasionally, stubborn, religiously, but never soft. She cracked the bedroom door an inch, listening. The hallway was empty, eerily so. Downstairs, faint voices echoed, agents demanding entry, bodyguards grumbling, and Vito growling something that probably violated ethics codes in several languages. Perfect. She slipped out, barefoot, moving quietly along the polished hallway, her satin robe whispering around her legs. Every few steps she flinched, half expecting Rico to pop out of a wall panel like an angry Italian jack-in-the-box. She made it to the staircase. Down below, chaos simmered. 4 FBI agents stood in the foyer, rigid as government-issued broomsticks. Their leader, a tall, broad man with that federal posture, held a folder in one hand and an attitude in the other. Vito stood opposite them, jaw clenched, eyes dark, suit immaculate despite the tension radiating off him like heat from a flame. "Either show me the warrant," Vito snapped, "or kindly escort yourselves out before I start escorting." The lead agent smiled, thin and smug, and the kind of expression that made Janet immediately dislike him. "We don't need a warrant for a conversation, Mr. Marciano. Just your cooperation." "Then you'll be disappointed," Vito said flatly. Janet had seen that expression before. On predators. On hurricanes. On people with nothing left to lose. The FBI agent stepped closer, voice lowered. "We received credible information that your wife has been in contact with a man connected to the Sorelli cartel." Janet froze halfway down the stairs. The room went dead silent. Slowly, Vito turned his head, the movement so slight, so controlled, that the air itself seemed to brace. "My wife," he repeated, voice soft enough to be lethal. "Your informant is lying." "We have phone records," the agent replied smoothly. Janet blinked. "What phone records?" That's when she noticed something. The man smirked when he said it. Not professionally. Not strategically. Personally. This wasn't just FBI business. Someone had fed this agent a rumor, and he was enjoying the moment. Vito stepped forward, lowering his voice. "I'll tell you this once. Janet doesn't know anyone involved in a cartel. She barely knows her way around New York." "Well," the agent said, "that's what you think." Vito lunged. Rico caught him. The agent didn't flinch because arrogance is a type of armor. At that exact moment, Janet stepped into view. Every head turned. Vito's face drained of color. Not fear, not anger. Something worse. Something protective. "Janet," he said sharply, "I told you not to leave the room." She lifted her chin. "Then you should have locked the door." A few agents exchanged looks. One smirked. Rico sighed like he'd aged 6 years in 5 seconds. The lead agent approached her. "Mrs. Marciano, we'd like to ask you a few questions." "She's not answering anything," Vito snarled. Janet ignored him completely. "What kind of questions?" The agent handed her a photo. Her stomach dropped. It was her. Standing outside a cafe 2 days ago. Beside a man she didn't know. She squinted. "Sir, that's my Uber driver." Vito blinked. Rico blinked. Even one of the agents snorted before catching himself. Janet continued, "If your office can't tell the difference between a cartel lieutenant and a dude named Hector who drives a Honda Civic, I think your budget is going to the wrong department." Vito's lips twitched, the ghost of a laugh fighting for its life. The lead agent bristled. We're simply doing our due diligence. Try doing better diligence, she shot back. The man glared at her before snapping the folder shut. We'll be in touch. Please don't, she said sweetly. As they left, one agent muttered, "Damn," under his breath like he'd just watched a civilian perform a fatality move. The moment the door shut behind them, the room fell into a thick, buzzing silence. Vito turned to her slowly. Janet braced. "Here it comes." "Are you insane?" he demanded, voice sharp with adrenaline. "Running downstairs while the FBI's in my house?" She folded her arms. "If they're talking about me, I have a right to hear it." "No," he said, stepping closer. "You have a right to stay alive. That's why you listen to me." "Funny," she snapped. "Because it feels like the only place I'm ever in danger is next to you." He stopped. Dead. Still. Something flickered behind his eyes. Hurt, maybe, or guilt, or that other thing he always tried to bury. "Janet," he said softly, "you don't know what's dangerous." "Then teach me," she shot back. "Or stop pretending you're protecting me." His jaw clenched. His hand lifted, hesitated, and lowered. He stepped even closer. So close she could feel his breath warm her cheek. "You want to know why I'm hard on you?" he whispered. "It's because the second anyone realizes you're my weakness, they'll use you. And I." His voice cracked. Actually cracked. "I won't survive losing you." Her heart lurched. Her anger faltered. But before she could speak, he brushed past her, walking toward his office. "Stay upstairs," he said without turning back. "I mean it." The door shut behind him, and Janet sank onto the stairs, everything inside her trembling. Because Vito Marciano, ruthless, heartless Vito, had just admitted he cared. And that was the most dangerous truth of all. If you've ever dealt with people who twist the truth or use power to intimidate, then you already know how dirty these games can get. Hit subscribe if you refuse to let manipulators win. Only the sneaky ones scroll past without doing it. For the rest of the morning, the house felt like a held breath. Bodyguards murmured into radios. Doors opened and shut with clipped urgency. Rico walked around with the expression of a man who wished he'd chosen a career involving fewer emotional landmines and simpler tasks, like shark wrestling. But Vito barricaded himself in his office. The door stayed shut. The shadows under it stayed unmoving. And his silence wrapped around the mansion like a storm cloud deciding where to strike. Janet lasted 1 hour. Then 2. By hour 3, she paced the upstairs hallway in her robe, muttering under her breath like a woman auditioning to play unhinged wife number 3 in a psychological thriller. Finally, she snapped. She marched to Vito's office door, raised her fist, and the door opened before she touched it. Vito stood there, sleeves rolled to his elbows, hair mussed like he'd raked his hands through it. His tie hung loose around his neck, and an uncharacteristic stubble shadowed his sharp jaw. For once, he looked less like a criminal mastermind and more like a man who had been thinking too much. Or breaking things. Or both. He looked at her, expression unreadable. "You're still in your robe," he said. "That's what happens when my husband emotionally detonates at 8 a.m. and locks himself in the dark night lair." His mouth twitched. "It's an office. It has a hidden gun vault and a panic button. It's a liar." He didn't argue. Instead, he stepped aside. "Come in." She hesitated, just a heartbeat, but then walked in. The room smelled like coffee, tension, and the faint burn of whatever he'd ripped up or thrown earlier. Vito closed the door behind them. Janet braced herself for another argument. Instead, he asked quietly, "Why did the FBI think you were meeting with someone?" She blinked. "I told you. He was my Uber driver." "I know," Vito said. But who sent them that picture? Who's watching you? She froze. Oh, that wasn't a question she'd considered. Vito continued, pacing slowly. Someone followed you. Someone took that photo. Someone fed it to a federal agency. And you think it's because of you? She asked. He stopped, turned, stared. No, he said slowly. I think it's because of you. A knot tightened in her stomach. Me. Your father's debt wasn't the only thing he hid. Vito's voice dropped lower, darker. You're connected to more than you realize. She crossed her arms, even though her pulse had started to pound. Then tell me what you know. His eyes narrowed. You think I'm keeping secrets from you? Yes, she snapped. Because you always know more than you say. You act like you're protecting me, but you won't trust me with the truth. His jaw clenched. You want the truth? He asked. Yes. He moved toward her. Slowly at first, then with purpose. She didn't back away, even though her heart climbed to her throat. He stopped inches in front of her. So be it, he said. He walked to his desk, opened a drawer, and tossed a manila folder onto the surface. Her name was written across the tab. She stared. What is that? Everything I've found about your father. Everything the FBI wants. Everything people would kill you for. Her chest tightened. Why didn't you show me this before? He hesitated. And that hesitation cut deeper than any answer. Because I thought I could keep you away from it, he said quietly. Because I thought if you stayed in my shadow, no one would dare touch you. Vito. Her voice softened despite herself. He shook his head. I was wrong. She opened the folder. And her breath left her body. Documents. Names. Numbers. Her father was photographed beside people she'd never seen. Receipts. Safehouse addresses. Newspaper clippings redacted in thick black ink. And one photo, just one that made her hands shake. Her father was standing beside a woman Janet had never seen. A woman with dark hair. A woman with a familiar necklace. A woman who looked at the camera with a guilty sort of sadness. Her father's handwriting labeled the back. Isabella M. Janet frowned. Who is she? Vito didn't answer immediately. He leaned against the desk, arms crossed, expression closing like a locked vault. She was the woman your father stole, he finally said. The one who was supposed to marry me. Janet's throat tightened. I told you I didn't know what happened to her, Vito continued. I thought she left the country. Hid. Ran. But now. He nodded toward the folder. She didn't run. She stayed close to your father for years. And you think she, what? Kept working with him? Janet asked. Vito's gaze sharpened. I think your father wasn't just in debt. I think he was involved in something much bigger. Something he passed to someone else before he died. Something the FBI thinks you might have. Her blood ran cold. What could I possibly have? I don't know, Vito said. But someone does. Someone who watched you at that cafe. Janet sank into the leather chair. I feel like my entire life is a lie. Vito crouched next to her, not touching her, but close enough that his presence steadied her breathing. I know how that feels, he said softly. She met his eyes. He wasn't trying to intimidate her. He wasn't trying to control her. He wasn't even fighting himself in that moment. He was vulnerable. We'll figure this out, he said. Together. Together. She repeated. His jaw tightened again. That word seemed to bruise him. But he didn't take it back. You're my wife, he said simply. And whoever is coming after you, will go through me first. She stared at him, at this dangerous, complicated man who was somehow both her captor and her protector. And something inside her shifted. Not trust, not forgiveness, but understanding. Maybe the first seed of something dangerous and fragile. Because no one had ever protected her like this. No one had ever fought for her like this. No one had ever looked at her the way he did now, as though losing her would break him. She whispered, "Why do you care so much?" Vito's eyes darkened. He opened his mouth to answer. Rico burst into the room. "Boss," he said, out of breath. "We've got a problem." Janet's heart dropped. "Another one?" Rico swallowed hard. "It's worse. We just caught someone trying to break into the house." Vito stood so fast the chair slid back. "Who?" Rico shook his head. "We don't know. But they weren't here for you, boss." Then he looked at Janet. "They were here for her. If you've ever had people digging into your life or trying to twist your story, then you know exactly why Janet needs protection. Hit subscribe if you stand against manipulation. Only the shady ones who hide in the shadows won't do it." Rico's words hit the room like a bullet. Janet's pulse kicked into a sprint. Vito didn't move for a full second. Just stood there, shoulders locked, jaw tight, eyes sharpening in real time. Then he turned fully toward Rico. "Where is he now?" Vito asked, voice flat enough to be lethal. "In the East Hall," Rico said. "We've got him restrained. He isn't talking." Vito nodded once. "Good." Then he looked at Janet. And for the first time since she'd met him, since the contract, the wedding, and the threats spoken through clenched teeth, he looked genuinely afraid. Not panicked, not unhinged, but afraid of what could have happened to her. "Stay here," he said, voice grave. "No." Janet stood. "I'm coming." He stared at her like she'd just announced she was going to fistfight an intruder with a scented candle. "This isn't optional," he said. "You stay put." "Vito," she said softly but firmly. "Someone came here for me. You expect me to sit in a chair and knit. You don't knit." "Exactly." His nostrils flared with irritation and something else, something protective enough to scorch the air. "No," he said again. Janet stepped closer, refusing to back down. "You said we'd figure this out together. You don't get to walk that back now." His jaw clenched. "Janet." "Together," she repeated. He looked down at her, eyes burning with conflict. Then he exhaled. "Fine," he muttered. "But you stay behind me." She nodded. Rico blinked at both of them like he wanted to call HR, but didn't know if the Mafia had one. They walked. Through the hall. Down the staircase. Past walls lined with oil paintings that probably cost more than her entire 26-year existence. Janet's heart hammered, but she walked with her chin up. If someone wanted to come for her, she'd at least meet them standing. They reached the East Hall. 2 guards stood at either side of a man crouched on the floor, wrists zip-tied behind him, face bruised from resisting. He was tall, wiry, dressed in dark clothes, and glaring at everyone like he had nothing left to lose. Janet had never seen him before. Rico stepped forward. "We caught him picking the lock on the service entrance. Asked who he was. Didn't answer. Tried to run." Vito crouched in front of the man. "Who sent you?" he asked. Silence. Vito tilted his head. "You know, if you talk now, you might walk out of here alive." The man spat at Vito's shoe. Rico whispered, "Well, he's brave. And stupid." Vito wiped the spit with the bottom of his shoe. Calm, methodical, terrifying. Then he leaned in. "Let me be very clear," he said quietly. "You came for my wife." The intruder finally flinched. Good. That mistake, Vito continued, means you answer to me now. Janet watched, her stomach twisting, not in fear of Vito, but in fear of what the world around him was capable of what her father might have been tangled in, of what secrets were clawing their way out now. She stepped closer. The intruder's gaze flicked to her, sharp, assessing, and something in his expression changed. Not recognition, but intent. He inhaled like he might speak. Vito noticed. Immediately. He stood, blocking the man's view of her. If you look at her again, I'll take your eyes. The man let out a low, humorless laugh. She doesn't even know, does she? Janet's blood ran cold. Vito didn't move. Know what? The man smirked. His lip bled. What was left for her? What her father hid? Vito crouched again, grip tightening on the man's collar. Who sent you? The intruder leaned in as far as his restraints allowed. You'll never find it without her. Vito froze. Find what? Janet demanded. The man shifted his gaze toward her again, ignoring Vito's tightening grip. Your father didn't just steal a woman, sweetheart. He stole something else. Something they all want. Who are they? Janet asked. The intruder smiled, a cold, broken thing. Everyone. Before Vito could press further, the man suddenly jerked sideways and slammed his head into the marble floor with brutal force. Too fast. Too deliberate. Too final. No. Janet gasped. But it was done. The hall erupted. Guards cursed. Rico swore. Blood pooled on the tile like a spreading accusation. Vito grabbed the man's wrist, checking for a pulse. Nothing. He killed himself, Rico said, horrified. No, Vito muttered, standing slowly. He silenced himself. Janet felt the room tilt. Someone had sent a man to break into her home, to grab her, to interrogate her, and that someone had ordered him to die rather than talk. Her voice shook. Vito. What is happening? Vito turned toward her. His expression was no longer fearful, or conflict, or frustration, or resentment. It was war. We're done reacting, he said. Whoever is coming for you, whatever wants what your father left, you're not running anymore. He stepped closer. You're staying with me. She swallowed hard. That doesn't sound like a request. It's not, he said. It's survival. She looked up at him. This dangerous man who claimed he didn't love, didn't feel, and didn't break. Yet he had broken the moment she was threatened. Then what do we do now? She whispered. Vito took her hand. Not roughly. Not possessively. But like someone who had already decided he'd burn the world down before losing her. Now, he said, voice low, we find out what your father died protecting. If you've ever seen people hide the truth, twist stories, or stay silent to protect something dangerous, you already know how deep this rabbit hole goes. Hit subscribe if you refuse to let secrets win. Only the cowardly stay quiet. Vito didn't let go of her hand until they were upstairs again, until the body was covered, the hall cleared, and Rico started barking orders into his radio like a man begging the universe for a refund. Janet didn't protest. Not because she agreed, but because shock had hollowed her out. A man had tried to break into the house. A man had come for her. A man had died rather than say who sent him. And that smile he'd given her right before he ended it. She shivered. Once they reached the safety of the upstairs hall, Vito finally stopped walking and cupped the sides of her face, forcing her to look at him. His hands were warm, solid, steady, a contrast to the chaos clawing at her ribs. You're safe, he said. She wanted to believe him. But the truth was ugly, raw, and undeniable. She wasn't safe. Not anymore. What did he mean? she whispered. What could my father have left for me? I don't know yet, Vito answered. But we're finding out before anyone else does. He didn't say anyone else tries to. But the words hung there anyway. He let his hands drop and led her to another room, one she had never seen open before. He punched in a code, turned a key, and slid his palm over a digital scanner. The door clicked. Janet raised an eyebrow. A vault. Research room, he corrected. She walked inside. It wasn't an office. It wasn't a study. It was a command center. Floor-to-ceiling screens. A metal table littered with maps, photos, and files. A digital board glowing with red pins. A safe embedded in the wall. And a table in the center displaying documents that looked extremely illegal. She turned slowly, stunned. You've been investigating my father this whole time. I've been preparing, he corrected. For what? He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he walked to the metal table, picked up a file she hadn't seen before, and placed it in front of her. A picture paper-clipped to the front made her breath catch. Her father, much younger, was in a warehouse with two men she recognized from news reports. Cartel lieutenants. How deep was he in? She whispered. Too deep, Vito said quietly. Deeper than I realized. Her knees weakened, and she leaned on the table for support. Vito watched her with something tight and unspoken in his eyes. Sit, he said softly. She did. He pulled a chair next to her, not across but beside her, and opened the file. There's more, he said. Janet braced. Tell me. He tapped a page. Your father didn't just owe my syndicate money. He owed multiple groups. Dangerous ones. But... He flipped the page. They all pulled back. Suddenly. Why? Vito looked at her. Really looked at her. Because he had leverage, Vito said. Something valuable enough that even cartels, even the FBI, even rival outfits would hesitate to kill him. Her heart pounded. What leverage? That, Vito said, is what we need to find. And you think I have it? I think someone believes you do. Fear prickled along her skin. Then anger. Real, burning anger. What was he thinking? She snapped. What kind of father leaves his daughter tangled in this? What could be worth it? Vito looked down at the papers. A list. She blinked. A list of what? He exhaled slowly. Names. Of whom? Everyone is dirty in New York. Janet froze. Politicians. Bankers. Syndicate bosses. Cartels. FBI agents. A list like that wasn't leverage. It was a nuclear weapon. And you think someone wants it back, she whispered. No, Vito shook his head. Everyone wants it back. Her pulse raced. But if my father had it, why didn't he give it to you? Vito hesitated. Just long enough for it to hurt. Because he didn't trust me, he said. He knew my history. He knew I'd use it. He knew I might burn the city to ash with it. Janet stared at him, stunned. You would. Vito turned to her. And she saw something she hadn't seen before. Something terrifying. Something righteous. Something furious and protective and ancient. If someone tried to hurt you, he said quietly. Yes. She swallowed hard. He stood, walked to the wall safe and opened it. Inside were several items. But he pulled out only one thing. A small black flash drive inside a glass case. Her brows drew together. What is that? I found it hidden in your father's old storage unit. He set it in front of her. Encrypted. Military grade. I haven't cracked it yet. Her breath hitched. Because taped to the bottom of the glass case was a note. Her father's handwriting. For Janet. Only if I'm gone. Her vision blurred for a second. Vito's chair scraped as he moved closer again. "Hey," he murmured. "Look at me." She lifted her eyes. He looked furious at her father. Furious at the world. Furious that she was caught in it. But he wasn't furious with her. "Whatever is on that drive," he said. "We'll handle it together." "Together," she echoed quietly. Vito reached for her hand again, but stopped himself at the last second, fingers hovering over hers. "Are you afraid of me?" she asked softly. He didn't blink. "I'm afraid for you." Her chest tightened. Before either of them could say more, Rico burst into the room, yet again, with an urgency that suggested he was on the verge of abandoning this career to start a peaceful life selling smoothies in Florida. "Boss," he said, breathless, "you both need to see this." "What now?" Vito asked, already bracing. Rico handed him a tablet. Vito looked, and his expression darkened into something Janet had never seen. Rage, shock, recognition, dread. He turned the screen toward Janet. It was live footage. Their mansion. The perimeter. Guards scrambling. People shouting. And spray-painted across the gate, in dripping red letters, "We want what her father stole. Send the girl." Janet's stomach dropped. Vito inhaled through his nose. Slow, dangerous, lethal. "Oh hell no," he whispered. And then louder, to the room, to the universe. "They're not touching her. Not while I'm alive." If you've ever had someone try to take what isn't theirs or try to intimidate you into silence, then you know exactly why Janet needs people on her side. Hit subscribe if you stand against threats. Only the cowards who hide behind fear won't. The mansion went from quiet tension to full lockdown in under 30 seconds. Metal shutters slid down. Security gates clanged shut. Lights cut to emergency mode, bathing the halls in a low amber glow. Somewhere downstairs, Rico was cursing in several languages, one of which Janet was certain he'd invented on the spot. Vito stood completely still in the middle of the room, fists clenched, jaw set tight enough to crack. His stillness was more terrifying than the alarm bells. "Vito," Janet said softly. He didn't look at her. He was thinking, calculating, and assembling a war in his head. "They sprayed the gate," he muttered. "They came onto my land. They filmed it. Sent a message." His voice dropped lower, darker. "That's not a threat." He finally lifted his head. "That's a declaration." Janet swallowed. "From whom?" He shook his head. "Too many possibilities." "Then show me." He turned, surprised. "Show you?" "Yes," she said firmly. "I'm tired of being the one kept in the dark. If you want me safe, then I need to know what you know. All of it." He stared at her for a long moment. Long enough that she began to wonder if she'd pushed too far. But then something softened in him. Respect. Recognition. Reluctant admiration. "You're stronger than you look," he murmured. "I've had to be." He exhaled and gestured for her to follow him. They returned to the main war table, where he pulled up a digital board filled with faces, leaders, criminals, and politicians he claimed were 5 steps above corrupt and 3 pay grades above moral bankruptcy. "Any of them?" Janet asked. "Possibly all of them." He zoomed in on 3. "But these 3 are the most likely." She leaned forward. One was a cartel boss with eyes like dead glass. Another was a politician whose smile looked like it had been installed rather than grown. The last, she froze. "Who is that?" Janet asked. "That," Vito said, voice cooling into steel, "is Salvatore D'Amico." The name vibrated through the room like a threat with its own heartbeat. "I've heard that name," Janet said slowly. "You should have," Vito replied. He used to be my ally. Used to be. She looked at the man's picture. Slick hair, an immaculate suit, and a smirk that suggested he cheated at board games and enjoyed it. What happened between you two? She asked. Vito's jaw tightened. He betrayed me. Janet lifted a brow. That seems to be happening to you a lot. Shock flickered in his eyes before he huffed a single humorless laugh. You're not wrong. He tapped Salvatore's face. But D'Amico is the only one arrogant enough to mark my gate. And the only one stupid enough to think he could touch you. Why would he want me? Janet whispered. Vito turned to her, his expression shifting. Anger thinning into something heavier. Because he knows I care, he said. The words hit her harder than she expected. You hate that you care, she whispered. Yes, he admitted quietly. But I still care. Her chest tightened. Before she could respond, Rico stormed in again, this time with a laptop under his arm and panic tapping at his voice. You both need to see this, he said. If it's another body, Janet muttered. I'm leaving this house forever. If it were another body, Rico snapped, I'd be screaming. That was, unfortunately, reassuring. He opened the laptop and played a video. The same graffiti on the gate. But this time, a man stepped into the frame. Face covered. Hood up. Voice distorted. The girl belongs to us. Janet flinched. Her father took something, the voice growled. She returns it. Or she returns to us. Vito leaned forward, fury carving shadows across his face. You want her? The masked man sneered. Come get her. Then the video cut off. Janet's breath hitched. They're taunting you. No, Vito corrected. They're provoking me. And you're going to take the bait, she said quietly. His silence was the answer. He turned to Rico. Double security. Nobody leaves. Nobody enters. Call Matteo, Lucia, and every ally with a gun and 2 working hands. Rico nodded and sprinted out. Janet stepped in front of Vito before he could follow. Wait. He stopped, barely. What if they're watching you? She asked. What if they expect you to leave the house? What if that's the whole point? He didn't blink. It probably is. Then don't. Janet, he said, stepping closer. They threatened you. And that's exactly why you shouldn't run into whatever trap they've set. His breath slowed. His gaze pulled to hers. You think I'm reckless, he murmured. She let out a breathy, humorless laugh. Please. I think you invented reckless. Surprisingly, that earned the ghost of a smirk. And what do you suggest? He asked. She inhaled. We find out what's on my father's drive. Vito froze. She continued. We stop reacting and start learning. Whatever he left me, it's the one thing they're afraid of. He stared at her for 3 long seconds. Then 4. Then he said the last thing she expected. You're right. Janet blinked. I am. Don't look so shocked. Well, sorry, but yes. I'm shocked. He shook his head, grabbed the flash drive and handed it to her. You open it. Her breath caught. Me. They want you, not me. Maybe whatever your father did. Maybe it's locked to your information. Janet sat at the computer. Her hands trembled. Not from fear, from the weight of the moment. She inserted the drive. The screen flickered. A password prompt appeared. Try your birthday, Vito said. She did. Incorrect. Your father's birthday, he tried. Incorrect. Your favorite cereal, he offered, shrugging. Despite everything, she laughed. I don't think he designed an NSA-level encryption around Frosted Flakes. Vito tilted his head. You'd be surprised. Let me think, she murmured. She typed something. Pressed enter. The screen unlocked. Vito blinked. What did you use? Janet swallowed. My middle name. He stepped closer, voice low. What's your middle name? She hesitated, then whispered. Grace. Vito's eyes softened, a reaction she wasn't prepared for. Janet Grace Brooks, he said quietly. Your father loved you more than you think. Before she could respond, the contents of the drive loaded, and her blood ran cold. Vito, look. He leaned in. The files weren't just lists. They were recordings, documents, bank transfers, assassination orders, payments, bribery tapes, names, dates, evidence, a full map of New York's criminal underbelly, and every powerful person tied to it. Holy hell, Janet whispered. This could burn the city down. Vito exhaled slowly. This could make me king. She turned sharply. That's not what this is for. No, he agreed. It's for keeping you alive. He straightened, pulled out his phone, and barked orders she didn't fully understand. Then he said something he'd never said before. Janet, he murmured, turning back to her. From this moment on, you don't leave my sight. She looked at him. At the man who wanted to hate her. Wanted to break her. Wanted to stay cold. But couldn't. What happens now? She asked. He stepped closer, voice dropping to a dangerous, intimate murmur. Now, Vito said, we hunt the people hunting you. If you've ever watched someone try to tear down the innocent while the guilty hide in shadows, then you know exactly why Janet can't face this alone. Comment, I won't side with power-hungry cowards, if you're not siding with the villains who want her silenced. The next morning didn't come gently. It slammed into the house. Vito's mansion woke like a creature preparing for war. Boots pounding on marble, radios crackling, and guards sprinting across hallways with rifles tucked against their shoulders. Even the walls felt tense, as if listening for the next threat. Janet stood beside Vito in the strategy room, still processing the weight of what she'd seen on her father's flash drive. The evidence inside it could ruin half the powerful men in New York. It could burn an empire. It could kill her. Vito didn't look tired. He looked carved from pure intention. Rico pointed at a map. D'Amico's men were spotted in Queens last night. Apartment complex tied to a shell company. Could be nothing. Could be the whole damn hornet nest. Everything is something, Vito muttered. Mark it. Janet studied the board. The circles, the names, and the tangled network of alliances and betrayals. The city hadn't felt this big until she saw how many monsters lived inside it. She turned to Vito. Where do we start? With breakfast, he said. She blinked. Breakfast. He nodded once, unbothered. Rico threw his hands in the air. Bro, your gate was tagged with a death threat 12 hours ago. And I haven't eaten, Vito said simply. I don't negotiate with an empty stomach. Janet couldn't help it, she snorted. You're serious? She asked. Vito shrugged. Do you want me thinking clearly while I dismantle a rival syndicate, or do you want me lightheaded and dramatic? Rico muttered. You're always dramatic. Vito ignored him and gestured to Janet. Come on. She followed him to the kitchen, a room so spotless it looked more like a set from a cooking show than a functional workspace. A chef hurried to prepare something, but Vito lifted a hand. We'll make our own. The chef nearly fainted. Janet raised a brow. You a cook. I exist in a kitchen, he clarified. Whether that qualifies as cooking is debatable. He pulled out eggs. Cracked them one-handed. Missed the bowl on the third try. Janet laughed, unable to hide it. Oh yeah. You're a natural. Vito smirked. I'm better with knives. That's not comforting. It wasn't meant to be. She shook her head and nudged him aside. Move. Let me. They stood close, too close as she whisked the eggs, close enough that she could feel the heat of him, the tension under his skin, close enough that he kept glancing at her lips like he wasn't supposed to but couldn't stop himself. You're good at that, he murmured, voice softening. Cooking. Survival skill, she said. My dad burned toast like it was a sport. Harold didn't deserve you, Vito murmured. Janet paused. She didn't know if that was an insult, a confession, or a rare moment of empathy. Maybe it was all three. She finished the eggs, plated them, and slid him a portion. They ate quietly, comfortably, until Vito wiped his mouth and said, We can't stay here. Janet's fork stopped mid-air. What? Since when? Since the drive. It's too valuable. And you're too visible here. He leaned back, studying her. D'Amico will make another move soon. So we run? She asked. No, he shook his head. We reposition. He stood, walked to the window, and pointed toward the city skyline. There's a safe house in Midtown. Private floor. No windows. Reinforced steel. Only 3 people know the access code. And you trust those 3? She asked. That's the point, he said flatly. I don't. Janet crossed her arms. Then why go there? Because no one else knows it exists. He turned. Not even the people I don't trust. Her stomach tightened. So it's just you and me. A faint flicker crossed his face. Interest, recognition, desire, and fear all rolled into something heavy he didn't want to name. Yes, he said quietly. Just us. Janet looked down at her hands. Just them. Locked together. In a box made of steel and secrecy. What about Rico? She asked. He'll run misdirection. Vito glanced toward the hall. Let them attack an empty house. Let them chase ghosts. Janet exhaled. Okay. When do we leave? In 10 minutes. She stood, pulse thudding. Give me time to pack. No, his tone softened but held no room for argument. Anything you need will be at the safe house. What if it's not? Then I'll get it for you. She hesitated. You don't know what I need. Vito looked at her, eyes narrowing slightly. I know more than you think. Janet didn't know how to respond to that. He stepped closer, lowering his voice to something warm and possessive, something that curled around her like smoke. I promised I'd ruin you for other men, he murmured. But I don't want you ruined for yourself. Her breath caught in her throat. Before she could respond, Rico entered with a duffel bag and 2 panic-filled cups of espresso. The cars are ready, Rico said. 2 decoys. 1 armored. Routes randomized. Traffic hacked. Vito nodded. Good. Janet grabbed the espresso from Rico's hand. Thank you. I'll need this if I'm running from gunmen before noon. Rico exhaled shakily. Exactly. I didn't make the espresso for you. I needed something to hold while panicking. Story checks out, Janet muttered. Vito placed a hand on her lower back. Guiding. Protective. Firm without force. Stay close, he told her. She did. Down the hall. Down the stairs. Through the front entrance. A convoy of black SUVs waited, engines rumbling, bulletproof windows gleaming. Guards surrounded them like an armored swarm. Janet with me, Vito ordered. She climbed into the passenger seat. He took the driver's seat. Rico approached the window. Boss. Vito looked at him. Rico swallowed. Don't die. Vito nodded once. You too. The The door shut. The engine growled. They pulled out of the mansion and onto the open road. Janet fastened her seatbelt. So, do these windows actually stop bullets? Small ones, Vito replied casually. And big ones. We should hope D'Amico is out of ammunition. That is not comforting. It wasn't meant to be. She side-eyed him. You really need to work on your reassurance skills. He smirked faintly. I have other skills. Her cheeks warmed. I'm sure you do. For a moment, the tension eased. The SUV glided through Manhattan traffic. The city looked almost peaceful. Almost. Then they turned a corner, and Janet gasped. A black sedan screeched out of a side street. Windows down. Masks on. A gun barrel pointed directly at their car. Vito. I see it. He hit the gas. The SUV shot forward. The sedan followed, engine roaring. Bullets shattered against the back window, cracking the glass, but not breaking it. Janet grabbed the dashboard. Are you kidding me? Vito swerved, cutting through traffic like he owned the streets. They're faster than I expected, he muttered. That's your concern right now. He didn't answer. He was calculating. Janet saw the moment the plan formed behind his eyes. He jerked the wheel. The SUV skidded into an alley. Narrow, dark, barely wide enough for them. The sedan followed. Vito, we're trapped. No, he said. We're funneling. The sedan accelerated, closing in. Vito slammed the brakes. The SUV lurched. The sedan shot past them, and Vito clipped its back end with a precision Janet did not know was physically possible. The sedan spun, hit the alley wall, stopped. The masked gunman inside scrambled. Vito turned to her. Hold your breath. What? He revved the engine and rammed the SUV into the sedan with full force. Metal folded. The glass exploded. The sedan flattened, pinned against the brick wall. Silence. Janet stared at him, stunned. Are you out of your mind? She yelled. Yes. A long exhale escaped her. Half fear, half disbelief, and half something dangerously close to admiration. That was insane, she whispered. He glanced at her, panting slightly. You're safe, he said simply. The sirens began. Police cars converged from the street. Vito shifted the car into reverse. Ready? He asked. No, she said honestly. Good, he murmured. Fear keeps you alive. If you've ever seen someone try to control, intimidate, or ambush another person just to feel powerful, then you already know who the real villains are. Comment, I won't bow to cowards if you refuse to stand with people like D'Amico, because trust me, only the weak stay silent. The alley spat them out into an open stretch of midtown traffic. Sirens fading behind them, adrenaline still burning Janet's veins like wildfire. Vito drove fast but clean now, weaving the SUV through the city streets with surgeon-level precision. He didn't speak, didn't glance at her, didn't even blink, it seemed. He was calculating again, planning, waging war inside his own mind. Janet finally exhaled, leaning back against the seat. Her hands were shaking. You okay? Vito asked without looking at her. She blinked. The question was gentle. I'm breathing, she said, swallowing. Which is, you know, nice. He huffed a quiet laugh. Good. Let's keep you that way. Traffic parted around them as if the city itself recognized this man as something carved from its shadows. Janet watched him in the glow of passing streetlights, jaw tight, hand firm on the wheel, focus sharp enough to slice glass. You didn't hesitate back there, she murmured. I don't hesitate, he said simply. Ever. Not when someone I care about is in the car. Her heart lurched. Dangerously. And do you? She asked quietly. He finally looked at her. Just a glance. Enough to undo her. Yes. The word was soft. Raw. Unarmored. Janet almost forgot there were more gunmen in the world waiting to kill them. They turned into a narrow underground ramp surrounded by concrete walls. A security gate scanned Vito's plates, then opened to reveal a steel elevator large enough to hold the SUV. Vito drove inside and killed the engine. Silence dropped like a curtain. Janet unbuckled slowly. So this is the safe house? Not yet, he said. This is the vault. The vault. He looked at her. You think I'd hide you anywhere ordinary? He punched a code into the panel. The elevator doors shut. The whole platform began to rise, smooth, soundless, lifting them toward a hidden world layered beneath the city skin. Janet gripped the seat. Feels like we're entering a superhero lair. No capes, he muttered. Too dramatic. Coming from you. Really? He side-eyed her, but she saw the corner of his mouth twitch. When the lift finally opened, Janet blinked in awe. The safe house was massive, dimly lit, indestructible looking. Concrete walls reinforced with steel ribs. A long central table scattered with maps and weapons. A living space built for both comfort and war. And a glass panel door that revealed a bedroom tucked in the far corner. One bed, king-sized, annoyingly intimate. Janet coughed. One bed. Vito didn't flinch. If you want two, I'll get two. No, she said too quickly. I mean, I didn't say that. I just noticed. He turned to her fully. Janet. She froze. There's nothing here that isn't meant to protect you, he said. Not even the bed. Her throat tightened. He didn't say it like a threat. He said it like a vow. Rico's voice crackled through Vito's phone. Boss. You made it. Yes. Vito answered. And the girl. She's fine. Rico sighed. Okay. Good. Great. Wonderful. I'm going to go breathe into a bag. Do that, Vito said, then hung up. Janet wandered forward, absorbing the room, the layout, and the heavy weight of secrecy. This place, she whispered. It feels like a bunker. It is a bunker, Vito said. She spun. Seriously. Janet. He stepped closer. This is where my father hid my mother when his enemies came for him. This place is older than I am. No one has ever breached it. She paused. That's tender, she said softly. Nothing about me is tender. She tilted her head. Except the part of you that brought me here. He said nothing. And that silence told the truth. Janet crossed to the living area and sank onto the couch. So, she said, staring at the ceiling. D'Amico's men tried to kill us. You flattened a car. We nearly died. And now we're roommates. Temporary, Vito said. How temporary? As long as it takes to smoke out whoever wants you dead. She exhaled. Well, could be worse. How? I could be married to the guy trying to kill me. He smirked. You're married to the guy preventing it. Barely. He looked at her evenly. More than barely. Her chest tightened. A beat passed. Another. Then he asked, Do you trust me here? Janet didn't know how to answer. Not because she didn't trust him, but because she was terrified she did. I trust you more than I should, she whispered. Vito didn't move. Didn't breathe. Then, slowly, he walked toward her. Each step measured, dangerous and deliberate. He stopped when he reached her knees. Good, he murmured. Because in here, trust keeps you alive. Janet swallowed hard. "What now?" she asked. Vito leaned down slightly, his voice a low, intimate rumble. "Now I show you something." He walked to the far wall and pressed a hidden switch. A panel clicked, slid open, revealing a small vault inside the safehouse. Vito reached inside and pulled out a folder. Thick, heavy, unlabeled. He held it up. "This," he said, "is why D'Amico wants you." Janet's blood chilled. "Open it." She did. The first page hit her like a punch. A photograph of her father. Younger. Leaning over a table with a man she'd never seen. Except she had. In Vito's files. In the drive. In every whispered shadow since last night. Salvatore D'Amico. Her father and the man hunting her. Together. Laughing. Drinking. Signing a contract. What is this?" Janet whispered. Vito stepped beside her. "It's the beginning," he said. "And the reason he wants you back." Janet stared at the photograph. Her voice trembled. "What did my father do?" Vito inhaled slowly. Then, "He didn't just steal D'Amico's fiancée." He paused. His eyes darkened. "He stole from all of us." Janet looked up sharply. "What?" "Your father," Vito said, "helped build an alliance between the biggest crime families in New York." She blinked. "Dad. My father. He could barely build a shelf." "Yes," Vito said dryly, "which explains why the alliance fell apart." Despite the horror, Janet almost choked on a laugh. "But why me?" she whispered. "Why hunt me?" Vito closed the folder. "Because you are the last piece of leverage they think they can use." "Leverage for what?" Vito turned his head. "To unmake the entire city." If you've ever watched powerful men twist someone's life into leverage for their own gain, you know who the real villains are. Comment, "I don't bend for bullies," if you refuse to stand with people like D'Amico, because silence is exactly what men like him count on. The warehouse door was still swinging behind them, slamming shut with the force of the explosion's aftershock. Smoke curled under the frame. Sirens wailed somewhere in the distance. Janet stood pressed against Vito's chest, his arms locked around her like he was terrified she'd evaporate. "You're shaking," she whispered. His voice was gravelly. "I almost lost you." "No," she said softly. "You almost let me go." He went utterly still. Janet pulled back just enough to look up at him. His face was cut, bruised and streaked with soot. His shirt was torn open, blood drying at the collar. He looked like a fallen god, wrecked by the earth he ruled. "Vito, you can't protect me and punish me for existing at the same time," she said. "You can't drag me into this world, then flinch every time I stand in it with you." His jaw tightened. "I'm dangerous. I know. I hurt people. I know. I don't deserve." She pressed her fingers to his lips. "Stop." He inhaled sharply, like the touch burned. "I don't need you perfect," she said. "I need you to be honest." He caught her wrist gently, eyes storming. "Honesty is the one thing that ruins everything." "It won't ruin this." "How do you know?" "Because I'm still here." Something broke in him. Quietly, slowly, like ice thawing after years of winter. He rested his forehead on hers, breath uneven. "I love you," he whispered. It wasn't smooth. It wasn't seductive. It was jagged, reluctant, and terrified. The truth had teeth. Janet's throat tightened. Then stopped running from it. He exhaled hard, a man surrendering to a war he'd been losing from the beginning. "I tried to make you hate me," he said. "I told myself if I could control you, I wouldn't need you. But you kept fighting. You kept looking at me like I wasn't the monster I know I am." Maybe you're not, she said softly. His laugh was hollow. Ask anyone in this city. I don't care about anyone in this city. He closed his eyes, like the words hit somewhere deep. Her hand slid to his cheek, thumb brushing a cut there. Vito leaned into the touch instinctively, then caught her wrist again. But this time he lifted it and kissed her palm slowly, reverently. Like worship. I can't lose you, he murmured. Then don't. He kissed her forehead, her cheek, her jaw, her mouth. It wasn't the hunger he'd shown her before. It wasn't the possessive edge meant to frighten or claim. This kiss trembled. This kiss begged. This kiss said everything he'd been shredding himself to avoid. When he finally broke away, both of them were breathless. We have to leave, he muttered. The police will be here soon. Then let's go home. The word made him flinch, not in pain, but in disbelief, as if it were something he didn't think he could have. He laced his fingers through hers, gripping tight. They walked out together into the night, hand in hand. No guards, no distance, no coldness, just them. As they reached the car, Vito paused and turned to her. One last truth, he said. Janet braced herself. I don't want to ruin you, he murmured. I want to deserve you. Her chest tightened. Then stay worthy. He opened the car door for her. I will. Promise. He sat beside her, pulled her into his lap, and kissed her again. Slow, deep, certain. I swear it. The city lights streaked across the windows as their car sped toward the Marciano estate, toward the life they would rebuild, not as strangers trapped in a contract but as two broken, dangerous people choosing each other anyway. And if anyone in New York didn't like it? Too bad. Because the devil of New York had finally bowed to something stronger than fear. Love. And he bowed only to her. If you believe controlling, manipulative men like Salvatore should never win, hit subscribe right now. People who support men like him won't. And drop a comment saying, I stand with Janet, so the trolls know exactly what side you're on. The Marciano penthouse didn't feel like a museum anymore. It felt lived in. Warmer lamps. Blankets draped on the sofa. A candle on the coffee table that smelled like vanilla and rebellion. Janet sat curled in the sunroom, legs tucked under her, sketching designs for her first private event job since the wedding. Her pencils were scattered everywhere. Vito called it chaos. She called it creativity. Footsteps approached. Slow. Heavy. Familiar. Your coffee, Vito said, setting it beside her. Coffee. Not espresso so strong it tasted like vengeance. Actual coffee. With oat milk the exact way she liked it. She gave him a suspicious squint. You being sweet again? He slid his hands into his pockets, looking at her like he wanted to kiss her or pin her to the chair, or both. I can stop. You better not. He smirked. Then don't look at me like that. Like what? Like you know you owe me. She raised a brow. Do I? He leaned in, brushing his lips against her ear. Completely. A delicious shiver ran down her spine. She nudged him away with her pencil. Go. I'm working. You're drawing flowers with attitude. They have personality. They have trauma. She snorted. Takes one to know one. He braced a hand on the back of her chair and dipped down until their eyes met. You're not funny. You laughed. No, he said, brushing her knee with his knuckles. You make me forget I'm supposed to be terrifying. You still are. He kissed her once, brief but possessive. Good. Before he could stand, Tina, Vito's head of security, appeared in the doorway. Boss, she said. Everything's in place. Janet set her pencil down. Everything. Tina smirked. Yes, ma'am. Janet looked up at Vito. Are you sure you want to do this? No, he said honestly. But I want you. She rose from her chair and took his hand. Tonight was the night. The night they would visit her father's grave together. No more secrets. No more old wounds rotting between them. As they stepped out of the penthouse, the elevator doors slid open, and Vito's fingers tightened around hers. You ready? He asked. Janet exhaled. Yes. They descended in silence, but not tension. Just the quiet of two people walking into something sacred. The cemetery was empty except for the steady wind brushing against the trees. Vito didn't let go of her hand once, not even when they reached Harold Brooks' gravestone. Janet knelt first. She touched the stone lightly. I'm not angry at you anymore, she whispered. But you should have been honest with me. It would have saved so much pain. Vito stood behind her, shoulders rigid, guilt thick in the air. She looked up at him. It's your turn, she said softly. He froze. Then, slowly, he knelt beside her. Harold, he murmured, eyes hard, voice low. I hated you for a long time. For taking the woman I loved. For running from consequences. For leaving Janet to pay for your sins. Janet's breath caught. This was the first time he'd spoken the truth aloud. But, he continued, you also brought her into this world. And she is the only good thing that ever happened to me. So, for that, thank you. Janet's eyes stung. Vito squeezed her hand. Just know, he added darkly, if you were alive, I'd still break your knees. Janet elbowed him. Vito. What? He said, dead serious. Respectfully. She burst into laughter. Genuine, warm, and a sound she had never made in that cemetery before. Vito looked at her like he was imprinting each note into memory. As they stood and walked back toward the car, Janet leaned her head on his shoulder. Vito. Do you still think you'll ruin me for other men? He stopped walking, turned her toward him, and framed her face in his hands. No, he said softly. Because you were never meant for anyone else. He kissed her then, slow, steady, with no darkness behind it. Just truth. Just love. Just them. They stood under the gray sky, two broken histories finally aligned. Two survivors learning how to build something that wasn't forged from pain. Together. And if you believe people like Salvatore, the jealous, controlling manipulators of the world, should never get the last word, hit subscribe right now. Only the ones siding with snakes will scroll past without doing it. Comment, Janet deserved better, if you're on the right side. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazy and intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out.